All right, good evening. Sorry for the delay. We welcome you to Township Board of Trustees meeting for Thursday, September 13th. And Mr. Mansour, would you lead us in the pledge?
Happy to. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I ask for approval of the consent agenda and the regular agenda, we did have two changes, I believe just two. Is that right, Mr. Lemina? One is we added the item B under the consent agenda for the treasurer's second quarter investment report. And we also, under operational issues, removed the issue with regard to the playscape matting. Were there any other changes, Mr. Lemina? Okay. Yes, Ms. Lane?
Mr. Supervisor, there was. For clarification, in item D under item 7, operational, it's not a resolution that you're adopting tonight, but the first reading of a proposed ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Mansour?
I'd like to have one quick question about item F under the consent agenda. The pump preventative maintenance contract at Kennedy Industries, is that a budgeted expense?
This is something that's new, so it was not anticipated to be in there this year. So there is money in his budget, obviously, but this wasn't anticipated in this year. But there is money in his budget for it.
So we'll have to make a budget amendment to.
It's only the $5,825 will be used this year. There's money in the cost center for the $5,825.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, why did we add under the consent agenda? Why did we add B?
The treasurer's second quarter, we can discuss it if you'd like. I mean, if we're going to discuss it, I'd rather wait till the next meeting because I haven't had a chance to really look it over. But
He provided it.
I think you provided it, right, Mr. Guzak, at Tuesday's meeting?
Right.
I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at it between Tuesday and now, or
I haven't had a
Mr.
chance
Mansour
to look
probably
at it.
hasn't. What's that?
I haven't had a chance to look at it.
Mr. Guzak, would you be opposed to placing on fourth Tuesday's meeting?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
As long as the superintendent thinks it's all right.
Okay with you, Mr. Lemina?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we'll make that change. Any other changes before we? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda and the regular agenda?
I move.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we will go to citizen comments. We'll start on the left side of the room, in the front, and work our way back. Okay. Anybody on the right-hand side that would like to? Ms. O'Neill?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Debbie Honay from the Grand Lake Township District Commission, and I'm just here to give you an update on the Historic District Commission's agendas and what we've been up to. We've got our upcoming Perry Pioneer Day. We've got flyers over on the table. Help yourself. That is Saturday, October 6th from 11 to 3. This year, with your permission, we are having a petting zoo in addition to our normal activities of tours, and Civil War reenactors are going to be there. We've got antique tractors and vehicles and things, archaeological digs, all kinds of fun things, free refreshments. So we'll be happy to see you come out and enjoy. We will also be having a meeting on Monday. It's our goal to have a new calendar put together so that we can ask for donations, and we're going to try to have that available for October 6th. We are also putting together our top 10 list as we have outlined in our priority plan. So we are moving forward with all those items. So we'll be happy to see you guys out on October 6th.
What is the top 10 list, Ms. O'Neill?
That is part of our strategic plan, that we have to make some priorities and budgeting and those kind of things. So I believe that Greg Boggs from DPW will be at our next meeting to kind of talk about maintenance and those kind of things to get some budget stuff together.
All right.
Yep.
Very good.
All right. Anything else? All right.
Thank you for all your good work.
Yep. Thank you very much.
And working our way back from Ms. Honay, anybody on the right side? Anybody in the back of the room? Mr. Ert?
Yes, Ed Ert, 7212 Porter Road. We had quite an interesting meeting, I think, on Tuesday, and I just want to make some comments on it, if we could, in regards to the playscape. You know, there's nothing wrong with a board member stepping up for the people that elected him, or her. Being concerned with the millage money and being used wisely, as Mr. Thomas did. We need more than one bid. I've said that before. It may be a fantastic deal what they're putting in. It may be fantastic, and it probably is. But you don't have a choice, and you don't have another bid. So you never know. You'll just never know if you go with that bid. It's interesting part of that meeting was there was an open meetings violation, and it was just blown off by the board. It wasn't even discussed. I'm not saying do anything about it, it's just this is the way the ball's rolling, okay? And it's interesting that this bid for the playscape was done by a city councilman / Park and Recreation Assistant Director. In the city, they have different standards. They have wood chips. Why is this city councilman / Parks and Recreation Director, Assistant, use wood chips in a city that's probably about $6,000 compared to $40,000 that's going into Bicentennial? You think we'd get some consensus from the Parks and Recs on what is the thing we want to do, and this is what the standard would be for the Parks and Recreation Commission, city and township wide. So, you know, I just think that you need choices, you need options, and the commission needs an option. We're going to bring this thing to the commission, and it's one thing they either vote on or don't vote on. Well, they're not going to say don't do it. Give the commission an option. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ert. Okay, any other public comment? At this time, I'd like to recognize one of our longtime volunteers with our Township Planning Commission. And Mr. Goldie is moving on to pursue other interests, but he's served over 8 years on our Planning Commission, and I hear through sources here that even longer than that you've been involved through your career with Rowe Engineering in the past and what have you. So he's really put in a number of years for us. And so I've got a little certificate of appreciation, and we have your name plaque from service. Grab the microphone so we can get this on video. It doesn't sound. If you face that way, you'll be on our video. So anyways, certificate of appreciation presented to Ron Goldie in recognition of your contribution to our community. On behalf of the residents of the Charter Township of Grand Blanc, I offer our sincere thanks to you for helping to make our township a better place over 8 years. Congratulations, Mr. Goldie. I need to sign that still, it looks like. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of everything that the Planning Commission does or what they get blamed for, but it's really a thankless job in many respects. But it's also a very critical part of our township. You know, the way our township looks and feels and what people think of our township is determined by those that serve on that Planning Commission. And it's great to know that we have a Planning Commission that really is looking out for the future of Grand Blanc, and not just, you know, today, but looking out for years to come. So these guys are professionals. We have Ed Brown here, who's also on the Planning Commission, and really appreciate all you guys' help. In a few minutes, we're going to appoint your replacement, but we really appreciate your help, Ron. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say I'm honored to serve on the Planning Commission. I've been a lifelong resident since I was a baby of Grand Blanc Township, except a few years to college and a few years when I got married. But I didn't really want to step aside. It's just schedule got me. I mean, I travel half the time for my job, and then now the kids are in the sports. I ran from the freshman football game after my son actually just scored a touchdown to run here. So, so I ran here, and it was time when my thing was up. I said, well, maybe it's time to let someone else have a shot at it. So, but I appreciate it now. It's an honor to serve. So,
Thank you.
Hope he gets another one.
And that they have a replay.
With that, we'll move to the approval of the minutes. We can either do them individually or as a whole.
So moved.
Okay,
As a whole.
As a whole.
Support.
all right. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, I'm wondering if the board would bear with me, and I should have brought this up beforehand, but the individual that we're appointing to our planning commission has a date with a planning commission in another municipality this evening. And I'm wondering if anybody would have a problem with us moving an operational issue A to just before the public hearing on truth and taxation. Would that be an issue to do that?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we move the appointment of Mr. Kassan Saab as our next item on the agenda, since the public hearing is the next thing.
So moved, or support.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so we're going to cover operational issue letter A. The board will consider a motion to appoint Kassan Saab to a 3-year term on the Planning Commission until July 2021.
I'd like to make the motion that we approve Kassan Saab for the 3-year term on the Planning Commission until July 21st.
Second.
July of 2021.
Correct.
Okay. It's been seconded. Any discussion? Mr. Saab, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, well, thank you for.
Feel free to use the microphone, because we'll get you on camera that way.
Don't usually need it, but.
I don't think we voted.
No?
Yeah, we just made
Okay.
the motion.
Yeah, we just made the motion, but all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I was gonna let them hear what you had to say first, and then make the decision.
No, I wanted to thank Scott for reaching out to me to invite me to join the planning commission in the first place. I've spent a lot of time on this side of the board. I'm really looking forward to, making some important decisions that, can help shape the future, much like what my new friend Ron was just talking about. I'm really looking forward to, filling his role. I've been a resident of the Grand Blanc Township for about 2.5 years now. I'm starting to raise my family here. I just had my second kid, so all the decisions I plan on making are going to be very important for me, my family, and all the rest of the citizens here. So again, I'm really looking forward to it. And as the supervisor had mentioned, I do have Fenton Township Planning Commission tonight. I am a real estate developer, so it's kind of in my blood, these planning commission meetings. But unfortunately, I have to go. I won't be going to Fenton instead of Grand Blanc ever from now on. They will never take precedence. I will be here for every planning commission from now on. But
Well,
thank you so much.
And one of the things that Mr. Saab brings to our planning commission is he does have development background, so has a couple of active developments right now, and grew up in a family that's been active in that area. So we look forward to you bringing that experience to our planning commission as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you for coming.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Saab.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will go back to our truth and taxation, and let me just make a switch here real quick. And we have our assessing director, Ms. Salvati. Mr. Limita, do you have any comments before Ms. Salvati?
Just while she's getting ready, just so everybody knows, the truth and taxation hearing, again, we talked a little bit about it Tuesday evening, and I really think that it's tough to explain because the language the state requires us to use. You see the notice in the paper, and it looks like the township board's asking to increase residents' taxes by 10%, and it can be confusing even for people who deal with it, on a constant basis. I think you'll see Director Salvati can kind of walk the board and the public through to help you get a better understanding, so you can see it. It's really, it has more to do with the Headley Amendment, being able to bring it back up based on the rate of inflation and what would happen if we didn't do it. And really the true impact has to do with the extra voted millage. But Director Salvati.
Okay, we can go forward. This is just a part of the law that allows us to go through this public hearing. So if you go to the next slide, the base tax rate. This is a calculation. It takes last year's taxable value minus your losses and divides it by this year's taxable value minus your additions. And it's just a straightforward calculation. If we did not come here tonight, this is the number that we would have to use and reduce our millage by, the 0.9699. What this does basically is gives us a factor to make all units of government equal, because they aren't equal right now. People pick where they live based on school districts, and houses sell for different amounts, and this is supposed to bring everybody back down so they're all equal. So that's that calculation. If we go to the next calculation, this is the millage rate that we would have overall if we did not go through truth and taxation. It's last year's millage rate times that 0.9699. That would be the maximum that we would be allowed to spread on our tax roll if we didn't go through this public hearing. If you go to the next slide, the millage reduction fraction, that's what we're going to use, and the only thing that's different in that is that they give us back the cost of living adjustment. So it's all the same calculations that you had for your base tax rate, but you get the 1.021 back that you, which was the cost of living last year. So it comes down to 0.9903. So we have to reduce all of our current millages by the 0.9903. If you go to the next calculation.
So I have a stop right there for just a second, if I could ask a question here.
Yes.
Yes.
So I understand the calculation. I get the inflation, the difference between the two. So what you're saying is that this is kind of an either or. We either use the 0.9669 or we use the 0.99.
You use the 0.9699 if you don't have this hearing.
Okay, without the hearing. Okay.
With the hearing, we're allowed to use 0.9903.
Because we have the public.
Because you've made notice in the paper that you were going to do this. You gave public notice, and so you're allowed to get back that cost of living adjustment.
Basically, the cost of living is the only difference.
That's all we're getting back here by this hearing is the cost of living adjustment. So if you go to the next one, column 5 on the 4029 that we turn into the county has last year's millages, and we have to reduce all of them by 0.9903, except the fire millage. The fire millage went to a vote of the people in August. That doesn't have to take the rollback. That stays at 1. Our mosquito millage, that was a renewal millage in August, but being it was a renewal millage, it has to take the rollback. So the maximum that we could spread for the mosquito millage is 0.2349. So if it's a renewal, it has to take the rollback. If it's a new millage, it doesn't have to take the rollback.
Until the following year.
The next year it will have to take a rollback if it's warranted. So our total maximum allowed this year is 6.8989. That's the maximum that we could spread. If you go to the next, we're asking for 6.8250. If you'll see the mosquito millage, that went down. It was 16.97 last year, and we never put more millage on than what it cost us to administer it. So we rolled it back. We've got more tax base to cover that, so we've rolled back that millage a little bit. The fire millage did go up to 1. It doesn't have to take the rollback, but operating, police, and Parks and Rec all took the rollback. So this is where we're at, 6.8250. Yes,
Director, can you explain why the millage doesn't take the roll back? I understand you say if it's a new millage, it takes the roll back.
because the .5 millage is gone now. They had a millage for 1 mill. So the .5 is gone. It's not under consideration anymore. It's 1 mill. It's new millage. The whole thing is all new.
Okay.
So new millages aren't subject to the rollback. Just renewals are.
On the first year
First
on the
year,
first
right.
year. So if you go to the next screen, I had put on the public hearing notice that it was an increase of .4363. The additional millage on $100,000 is $43.63. It's straightforward. Even though the fire millage was .5 mils, with everybody else taking a rollback, it's actually $43.63. Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Is that a one-time charge?
What?
4663.
That's what the increase in your tax bill would be based on a $100,000 assessment. It's based on the millage rate. The millage went up for fire, everybody else took a rollback. So
That's the overall.
it's the overall for this year. We may have a different millage next year depending on what the millages end up being. So this is for this year only.
So that's a one-year charge, a yearly charge, I should say.
It's, yeah. It's
Yearly calculation.
It's only in effect for 1 year.
It's going to be in effect for the winter
No, forever.
taxes.
Okay.
So,
Well, next year it could be rolled back.
okay, if you go to the next screen, the proposed increase .4363, it's a simple calculation. Your proposed millage of 6.8250 minus last year's millage of 6.3887 is .4363. So that's the proposed increase by the township millage.
Excuse me.
But it's still
Excuse me.
overall lower. Yeah. Mr. Mansur?
That's, I mean, that is not, is it a proposed increase? I mean, it's a voted,
It's not an increase till you vote on it.
okay.
It's proposed at this point.
But,
That's what you're here for.
okay.
But it's still less than our voted millage. Because, for example, mosquito millage, what we voted for originally was
Right, and
one
we've
number,
taken,
and we're lower, so we're
we're-
still lower overall
right,
than what was voted on originally by our residents. We're not increasing over and above what was voted on by our residents. Mr. Thomas, then Mr.
The only increase really that we're getting, it would be decreased, but the only increase we're really getting is the $0.5 for the fire millage.
right, and it doesn't even equal out to $0.5
Because
because
we
everybody
lowered-
else is taking the rollback.
Because when we say everybody else for our residents, and what that means is if we don't, like the mosquito millage, if we don't use it, we don't charge the residents,
No.
basically. And then you still have the Headley Amendment, so it's really, you're not paying as, if we didn't have the increase, you would have had a decrease in your taxes this year.
Everybody would have taken a rollback. The only thing that caused this to be an increase
Is the
was the
fire millage.
$0.5 that was voted in by the people in
the fire.
August in the election.
Correct.
Mr. Atkins?
That's just what I wanted clarity on, because I'm really confused. I think a lot of people get confused about these. So we're not asking for additional revenue. This was just the revenue that was voted on.
This is the vote of the
Nothing
people.
above and beyond that.
Right.
Okay.
We're asking for less money.
Can I give a layman's version of this? We voted
Sure.
in, we voted in a certain number of mills for each of these items on the list. Fire, police, mosquito, what have you, operations. We're not going above what was voted in by the residents.
not at all.
What happens is state law requires that we roll it back each year based on a number of factors. What we're doing is we're trying to basically keep it at a stable number, but it's still going
We're
If
still
we
taking a
ever did
rollback.
this, our taxes eventually over the next 50 years diminish substantially, theoretically. But bottom line is, we aren't increasing above what was voted by our residents.
But we're decreasing.
It's
No.
we're decreasing.
We're decreasing everything except the fire millage
Right.
that was voted on by the
Exactly.
residents.
Right,
Everybody else is taking a rollback.
exactly.
Perfect. Should have been slide one.
Because I tell you what, I did get an email from an individual that was concerned because the ad in the paper, they were under the perception that
Right.
we were gonna see a 10% increase in our taxes.
I've got that here in this
Okay.
thing too.
All right, let's let Ms. Salvati finish, and then
We'll go on for a minute. The increase operating revenue 10.14 that was in the newspaper, you take the 2017 millage rate times the base tax rate, which is a reduced millage of 6.19464. And the way that that is calculated, you take the proposed tax rate of 6.8250, which includes that half a mil for the fire department. It includes all the rollbacks and everything. And then you have to divide it as though you weren't coming to this meeting, that you were taking the base tax rate, and that's how it comes up with 10%. So it's just a calculation.
who comes up with these formulas,
State
Ms.
law.
Salvati? Our
It's
tax-
just a calculation. You put it in the paper and you go, this is ludicrous. But it's not, the reduced millage is not what we're going to have. The 6.3887 was our starting number last year. So we're really not increasing at 10%. It's 10% if we walk away and don't have this hearing.
I like the sounds of that better.
You know, so it's just a calculation that has to go in the newspaper.
Is there a public
Nobody
comment
likes
section
the
to this
wording
public
of it. Everybody has said this is ludicrous.
Ms.
It-
Salvati, there's a public hearing portion to, a public comment portion to this public hearing as well. So I see there's a few residents, I think we have a few questions or comments, so
Okay,
when we get through with, I think, a couple more slides, then
Yeah.
we'll entertain anybody who has questions to come forward or concerned.
but
Are
go
we good
ahead.
with this one?
That's how the calculation came about that was in the newspaper.
Okay.
That's how the state wants it. They mandate how it's put in the paper. They mandate the wording, they mandate the calculation. It's,
And if anybody needs further explanation after we're done with this tonight, they can contact you, I would imagine, as well.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr.
may
Massey?
I ask a question? If I understood you correctly, did you say each year our taxes are going down?
Yes,
It's a Hadley amendment.
Here, this is what the
because of the Headley Amendment by the state of Michigan that was voted on, that basically would reduce them each year.
The reason I'm asking the question, that's very alarming to me. So, in the future, over the years, if that continues, how is the township supposed to function financially? Grow.
Mr. Lemata?
So, first, you can hold the truth and taxation hearings to try to hold as much as possible, get your rate of inflation back. I do want to point out to everybody that even though we've had some decent growth for the last 5 years after many years of lost taxable value, we're still only at 87% of the taxable value we were at before the recession. So after 5 strong years of great commercial and residential growth, we're at 87% of our taxable value. With the Headley Amendment rolls back, and one of the things that's just an anomaly of our taxes the way they are now, if values drop like they did in the recession, property values drop, they drop immediately. But when we try to come back up, we can only grow at the rate of inflation of 5%, whichever's less. So even as taxable values start to climb, it would take us many, many years, 20 years, to recapture a 20% loss in the taxable value.
and you can never go above 1 in that. So you could calculate out that you really need a 3% increase, but they won't let you gain more than 1, so
One per year.
if that's what it calculates.
Right.
anything more than 1, you can just call it 1 because that's the only thing the state's going to allow you to collect.
Now, there are times you can go back and ask the voters to allow you to bring the millage rates back up, you know, if you
Fall too far
So
behind.
you don't, it's not like it's, just keeps going until it disappears, but there are some mechanisms in place that you can come back
Right.
up.
Would a good example be if you look at the police millage, that is we should be collecting 1 mil for police millage, and now we're collecting 0.9%.
I believe their millage was 0.95 originally, and they're down to 9.0
Right.
something now, so they've continued to take rollbacks over the years. I think that's a 20-year millage, so that was
So
put
that's
in
why the
20
big
years
drop.
ago, so it's taken 20 years, but we've lost millage over the years.
Well, one of the benefits the township has of collecting all of the taxes, whether it's county tax, school tax, what have you, is everybody thinks all that money ends up staying right here in our facility, and it actually, only 17% of it actually stays with the township. The rest of it is to all the taxing entities other than us. So,
We don't get much.
right, so, and those others increase significantly. And so if people are seeing an increase in their tax bill, it isn't necessarily our operation. It could be their voted mills for Mott College, could be schools, could be ISD, what have you.
Actually, everybody this year, including the county, the school, everybody took a rollback this year.
Okay, so it should
The
go
only
down.
one that didn't take the rollback was the new fire millage and the new art council millage,
Okay,
but everybody else took a
Okay.
rollback.
all right,
So,
okay.
if you go to the next slide. The 1.93 increase is the 2018 taxable value times the reduced millage, the base tax rate, versus the 2017 taxable value times the millage rate. So that, again, that's, if we didn't come to this hearing, that's what it would be. That was everything that was in that notice. So that's how the calculations came about for everything in that notice. And it really means nothing because we're having this hearing to get that little bit of cost of living adjustment number back. If you go to the next screen, you need to consider that our eligible manufacturing personal property is still on the decline. It's going to be gone in the next 6 years. The small business exemptions for personal property, those put the property taxes at 0. And the continued filing for disabled vets, I think we're at 3.8 million has come off with disabled veterans at this point.
In
Not
Grand
that
Blanc
they're,
Township?
yes, just in Grand Blanc Township. Not that they're not, if they're eligible for it and they bring in the proper paperwork, they get the exemption. And I don't fault them for it, but
Right.
we were kind of blindsided by it, and it's just keeps increasing every year. And if you go to the last page, here's our millage history. And you can notice that what the millage was in each area taxing authority. The fire millage came on in 2010. That's at 1 now because of the August vote. Parks and Rec didn't occur until 2016. That was a vote of the people as well. The mosquito millage is a vote of the people. When we went through this recession and we had a lot of MTTs, we were collecting a higher millage. We're starting to roll that back and get that back into a lower number. General operating, police operating, and Parks and Rec all took a rollback this year. And that's how we got to the millage that we have right now.
Supervisor?
Yes,
Supervisor?
Mr. Answer?
Ms. Hovati, I actually think that this is, in the whole package, I think this is the best page of them all in terms of providing perspective over the years
It's
of where
hard to
this is
see
going.
when you just see a number.
But this frames it all very well, and you can see that the difference between 17 and 18 is basically the half mil. So that's for the police.
Right.
So for the fire, I'm sorry. So this says for their tax year 2018. So can you help me, when is that exactly, from what date to what date?
It's going to be on the winter tax bill December 1st, and it covers for next year's operating.
Okay, so it will be the winter tax that is
The
on
winter-
in December, payable in February,
Mhm.
and then the July payable in September. That's considered the 2018 tax.
The 2000 summer
this-
tax is already out.
You meant for
They've-
next year.
So,
Oh.
but this says for tax year 2018, so that's what I'm
Township
questioning.
millages are only on the winter tax bill. These are all winter taxes.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
The schools and GISD and MOT, they all collect in the summertime.
Got it, thank you.
And they all took the rollback, but these are all going on the winter tax bill.
Ms. Lane?
For the board, the schools are collecting their millage in July 1st of 2018 because they run their school budget from July 1 to June 30th. That's why they have over the years moved from December billings to July billings, because they were borrowing to get through the start of their year. So everything in July gets sent out to the various school districts, Grand Blanc, Lake Fenton, Genesee Intermediate Schools. So we don't keep any of that here, only to process it and have the treasurer's office balance it out and send them the check. We only get our money for next year from December to February.
Thanks, Ms. Lane.
Miss-
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, going back to the previous page, if I understand that correctly, that's sort of frightening to me, the way I interpret that page. Because you're saying that taxes for the township are gonna decrease. Is that what you're saying?
Only in the industrial manufacturing. It's
I
industrial
mean, the
property.
income taxes, the taxes that we bring in, the dollar amount. Is that what you're saying?
The-
Well, with regard to personal property tax, the
personal
state is
property-
reducing that.
The industrial properties,
Yes.
they went through a vote of the people to pay their money to the state, and then we get back essential services money. But we get to do all the gyrations and all the paperwork, and it all goes to the state. And we don't get anything that is newer than 2012 in industrial personal property anymore. Anything that came on newer than that, it goes to a calculation at the state.
Which phasing out personal property, which personal property tax actually
There
is-
won't be any industrial personal property in another
which
6
is
years.
kind of unique to Michigan, actually, that,
We're somewhere between 14 and 15 million that's gonna come off our tax roll in the next 6 years.
and, you know, the other two things, the veterans, I mean, it was voted, the state, I guess, is looking at some type of reimbursement for that. I haven't seen anything more other than,
I've heard that for 3 years. I'll be
Right.
really surprised when it happens.
right? So. Okay, so we'll go back to that's the final slide, Ms. Avani?
Yep.
Okay. Probably could open it now for public to comment. We'll open the floor for public comment for the public hearing, and if, we'll start on the left side of the room here in the front. If you have any comments or concerns or questions, come on up. You give us your name and address, and I think we have 3 minutes for each person.
I'm
So,
Ann. I'm new to Grand Blanc. My husband's David. We live in Genesee Oaks. We have a new build.
Your last name, ma'am?
Turk, Ann Turk. 4487 Christina Drive. Okay, this clarified a lot, the whole 10% thing. So essentially what you're saying is if this meeting wasn't held, there wouldn't have been the rollbacks and it would have been higher. I think that that's how I understood this.
We would have had to take the lower millage, and we wouldn't have gotten that proposed millage. It's the difference between what we propose and what the rollback, the base tax rate was.
Okay.
It's just a calculation. It's never gonna happen because we had the fire millage that was a vote of the people. It's just a calculation that the state makes us go through.
Okay,
So we,
I'll be honest with you, our
Yes.
taxes are extremely high for the area we're in. We're a new build, and I guess I'm a little bit disappointed because no one could tell us what our taxes were gonna be. And then, so then we got our tax bill for $3,300 for the summer taxes for a 1,700 square foot home. So I'm looking at my tax bill thinking, are you kidding me? You know, because then we still have the winter tax bill, which is gonna be the mills that pass, which I'm pro-fire, pro-police, pro-good for the community, but we don't have kids in the school system, and I can see a lot of your school taxes go to the, or my taxes go to the schools. So I was thinking I couldn't afford to stay here. I haven't even been here a year, looking at all the new increases. I called because our assessed value was what we actually paid for the home. And I'm assuming that that's how they do it, not what the area homes had, because you talked about the property losses.
It's the entire neighborhood. If yours ended up being exactly at 50%, it's a fluke,
It did.
because it's supposed to be the average of all.
No, we were at the full assessed 260,000, so we have a 130 taxable value. So that put us in a very high tax bracket. So what I talked to the township gal, the treasurer, whoever does your taxes,
Miss Salvati, right here.
Well, she might have talked to Nancy.
and I just said, I didn't get any break. We didn't get any break. I mean, we don't have a finished basement. I'd like to put a pool in, but I'm not doing any of these things because what's good for me is good for you, and I don't mind paying my taxes. But, you know, we're getting close to retirement. We don't have kids. We're empty nests. And I'm thinking of already selling, and who wants to come to a 3-bedroom, 1,700 square foot ranch? It's a beautiful home. We like the neighborhood, but I mean, I really felt like we got sacked with a full assessed value of what we exactly paid for the home. So, I mean, I'm pro fire. My son's a firefighter, and so when I saw this, I thought, you got to be kidding me. I mean, we haven't even been here a year. It's a year, November 11th, that we closed. And it's a great community, but I kind of feel like we got the brunt of the new people. And there's 3 new builds going up, and I thought, oh, I hope they check out to see what their taxes are. Because my neighbor, they purchased for $198 a rancher, 1,500 square foot. They bought in September, and their taxes, their assessed taxes, their taxable value is $85,000. So she shared that with me, and we're at 130. So that's why, but this, this clarified this, and I feel a little better that they're not gonna go up another $400 next year. No, I'm serious, I work casual, I'm a nurse, and I'm gonna have to move, I can't afford my taxes. Anyway,
I understand.
thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, and you know what, we appreciate you coming to the meeting and voicing your concerns, so, thank you.
Scott, sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Atkins?
Just to get the information out to the public, since you're new to the township, there is a process, correct, Mr. Superintendent, for board of review if you think there is, maybe your SEV is out of whack for whatever reason, and I don't know that, but could you maybe touch on the process if there's...
I can. Director Salvati's here, but the first thing you should probably do to look at the value of your home to make sure you feel like it's valued correctly is to make an appointment with the assessing department, with Director Salvati's department. Come in and take a look at how they valued your home and make sure that you feel that it's fair, that it's factual, because they'll print out your field card, they'll give you the list, and you walk right through it and make sure that what they're saying on your home that they put the value on is exactly what's in there. And that's the first start, to make sure that we agree factually that what we think is in your home is actually in your home. And then from there, if you still feel that you might have some evidence that the Board of Review would consider and take a look at the assessed value of your home, you can come in during the March Board of Review and challenge evaluation. But first step, I would call the assessing department, Director Salvati's department, and ask if you can set up an appointment to come in and just have somebody walk you through the valuation of your home.
Okay. Any other comments or concerns with regard to the truth of taxation? Mr. Ert?
I just thought maybe I'd enter 721 how I evaluate this thing. I voted in a $500,000 over what we had for fire millage, okay? So I'm looking to pay an extra $500,000. But was on that board was I'm actually paying 0.43 mils more. So all the other departments took a hit. And I didn't increase, I actually went down. I don't know if everybody can look at it simpler like that, okay? Yeah. And as far as maybe to add to Mr. Lamata's what he said, for these people, they could just go online too and look and see if their house is what the tax assessor says it is. Because I personally did that probably 10, 15 years ago, probably 15 years ago, and realized I was being charged for a 5-bedroom home and I only have 3. And I got some money back. So take a look.
Thank you, Mr. Okay. Anything else? We'll close the public comment and bring it back up here to our board. And I don't believe we take action at this time, do we? Or
Nope.
Next item on
yeah,
the
we're going to
agenda.
do that under operational issues. So, okay, we'll close the public hearing, and Ms. Salvati, we appreciate your time. The first operational issue is the board will consider motion to, or consider resolution to approve a total authorized levy of 6.8250 mils for tax year 2018, comprised of 4.5143 mils for township operating, 0.9026 mils for extra voted police, 0.1610 mils for extra voted mosquito, 1 mil for extra voted fire, 0.2471 mils for extra voted parks and recreation.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Supported and seconded. Any further discussion?
Roll call.
Okay, Ms. Lane?
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. It was unanimous.
Okay. Thank you. And I think it's fair to say that our board works hard to make sure that we garner every investment dollar that we can to make sure we don't have to raise taxes. I think one of the things that speaks loudly of our township is that despite the economic downturn, our township survived that by cutting back, and we didn't raise taxes during that time period. And really, we're still getting back up to speed in terms of dollars that we operate our township on. So we really aren't even operating at the full dollar amount that we had before. So anyways, item C, the board will consider a motion to approve the purchase and installation of campus-wide Wi-Fi mesh network by Communications Technologies, Inc., CTI, in the amount of $15,890, and authorize superintendent to execute all required agreements. We covered this on Tuesday at our committee of the whole. This will allow us to have a Wi-Fi network throughout our building, as well as outside with our police department, where they're able to pull up and submit the reports from their vehicle, as well as in our DPW barns, where they're also working on tablets and what have you, and accessing our computer systems and uploading reports as well. Mr. Limita, any further explanation? I know Mr. Mansour wasn't here for the discussion Tuesday, but any questions, Mr. Mansour?
Yes, actually. First one is this a budgeted expense?
It was not budgeted. We were going to do this actually in 2019. We moved it up to 2018 because we are not going to do the execute time management, basically a time clock on our systems, because we found out that through people who are using it doesn't mesh well with BSNA. So that freed up, that was for $24,000. This expenditure is at $15,890. We thought we would move it up to 2018 because we already had the money allocated from capital projects.
So it's a different project, but we have the money that project was for next year. So do we have the money this year to do it?
Right, so we canceled one that we were gonna do this year.
Fine.
And so we're just replacing it with this one.
Is there a additional annual maintenance that will go with this that we need to consider?
I don't know that there's maintenance on this. This is really, other than our what we pay for have Wi-Fi in the building, because this is really hardware that's getting put in. It's service points that we need to put. Our biggest problem, I know you weren't here on Tuesday, but this was an armory, an old armory, so there's a lot of walls that block. So the ones that we put in, unfortunately, if you leave finance and come up to the auditorium, you lose your Wi-Fi and start over again. And then we didn't have any work in the DPW barn, and with our increased reliance on information technology, with handheld units, pads, everything, we just don't have what we need in the police department, the DPW, or in the general office. So that's what we're doing, is we're spreading it out around the entire municipal campus so that we'll have one Wi-Fi network that once you're on when you're here.
So you're saying there's nearly no additional anticipated maintenance until maybe it needs to be replaced in 5, 10, whatever the time.
Yeah, they probably have a 10-year lifespan of the hardware units.
Okay. Final question is do we make any attempt to determine what kind of a cost offset this would be, or what kind of a benefit it is to us? I mean, we're spending $16,000. Is it some way make us? I heard what you just said, but is there some quantifiable way that says we're better somehow by $16,000?
I don't know that you can quantify that, but I mean, just for example, the DPW, they have to leave the DPW barn, come inside in order to get access to Wi-Fi to do their work before they go back out to download work orders and that kind of thing. When the police officers pull back in to do their reports, you'll see their cars pulled up and sitting outside of the department because they try to find a spot where they can pick up Wi-Fi in their cars. What we're trying to do is get that Wi-Fi so it's one unit that goes out through the entire area, so that you don't have those where you're dropping your Wi-Fi.
So this is really a convenience thing, because whether they're sitting in their car or they come inside, either way, but it's really a convenience for them.
It's I mean, I think it's a convenience, yes, but it's certainly I mean, we need to have a Wi-Fi that works throughout the campus wide.
Thank you.
It is a little bit spotty as well. I know that, depending on where you're at, and I believe I heard you say that they came in and to see where some of the trouble spots were as well, but depending on where you're at in the building, you may not be able to get Wi-Fi. So, the other thing is, if we're going to a network that, with the development ready, we're going to document storage, digital document storage. We were looking at the expense of building, a facility or something. We can't destroy any of these documents. So if we're going to have access to those things, you need a Wi-Fi that can, if we're looking at building plans, you can't wait here for 20 minutes for it to download. And so in that term, I think it will help productivity in terms of it as those things get in place, because I've seen other businesses where the technology, the Wi-Fi is slow, and you're using great technology, such as data storage. You have trouble accessing it because the Wi-Fi is so horrible. So I think we'll notice a bigger difference when we get those other programs up and running.
And just one other point, it also does create a secure campus-wide network instead of multiple different access points where you're logging in from a different access point. We have one access point that stays and it's secure, runs through our servers, where not that our other ones aren't secure, but you're logging out, logging in, creates more opportunities for hackers,
Infiltration.
I guess. Just exposes you more.
We'll have a separate network for guests as well. So they won't be accessing the same network that their workers will be. Okay, so
We
looking
need a
for a motion.
So move.
Got a motion, any support?
Support.
Skuzak. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item D, the board will consider a motion to accept for first reading the ordinance creating a downtown development authority and designating boundaries of the district as discussed in the public hearing held June 14th, 2018. Again, for the public, what this will allow us to do is we have a map. I'm not sure if it's on our website yet, but it will be on our website, I believe, shortly. Allows us to capture the taxes from this designated area, which is
thumbnail sketches in the southern portion of our township, allow us to capture any new taxes in those areas to use for redevelopment in that area, which we're very excited about enhancing that area. You see here on my left the Blanc Tech Village illustration, which would be part of that area, as well as even more property than that. But it will allow us to offer some incentives using the tax dollars that normally would go to other county entities. Mr. Laddie?
No, that's correct, and that, although this is really the second step in a four-step process that ends in that, with that result. We talked about the ordinance itself on Tuesday. We talked about this as, again, really just getting the ball rolling with the creation of a board of directors. It's cementing in the geographic area of the district, and it's also creating the authority. So we're going to need a second reading on this, and we've got it set up for what we don't usually do operational issues on our last Tuesday meeting, but because there may be a window for us to move this along quickly, we want you to consider that at your last meeting of this month, and it will be the second reading. If there's any questions that I can answer for you, I'm happy to do that. Also, I realize that this will be an ongoing process as we begin to talk about, Supervisor Bennett will come back with nominations for people on the board. One of the things that's important about the board tonight is that you're gonna peg that membership at 8 people, including Supervisor Bennett. So you'll be seeing nominations for Mr. Bennett. You'll be needing to approve those. We'll be encouraging them to that board to meet. We'll be encouraging them to get working right away on a plan that will serve as the basis for the TIF plan, or the tax recapture that Supervisor Bennett talked about. And also, we're going to have to talk about how we're going to give them some seed money. And by my calculations, again, if we go a commercial route on the development plan, we're probably looking at about $25,000. Although, frankly, in-house, I think we could do a fair amount of that work if we chose to do it. But anyway, this is step one of step two of about a 4-step process.
Mr. Mansour?
I'm sorry, you could expect me to ask a couple of questions. So in section 4, which had to do with the termination of the DDA, I was looking through that, and it seems to me as though the purpose of the DDA, it seems like it's never completed. It's perpetual. So I would like to see some verbiage in there that talks about ability to terminate the DDA at the will of the board.
Well, if you actually, you know, it's interesting because the statute requires, when we create a plan, that the plan will have not only all of the possible projects that we want to have in the DDA, it'll also have estimates of cost, and it will have dates for the proposed completion of the plan. It will also have the financing element of that. How much does that cost? When the plan has been completed, whatever time, however long that takes, and it depends on how much taxes you can move into the district, then technically that is the end life of the DDA, and the board at that time is then obligated to dissolve the DDA. And we actually had this discussion. Supervisor Massey Trustee Massey had brought this up as well. He also had the concern about this having an indefinite life, and if you feel that you don't want to just rely on the lifetime of the plan as far as its function goes in carrying out its duties, and you want to have something in the ordinance, I can add language that says that when that plan has reached when it's fulfilled its purpose, when it's met all its goals, then the board shall dissolve the DDA. I'm happy to put that in there. I don't know if we can put an arbitrary ending date on it at this point in time, because again, it's gonna, the life of the DDA will correspond directly with how long it takes to do all the projects.
Well, and we're capturing the taxes while it is operating, is that correct?
Correct, and hopefully, again, hopefully the shorter the better, because that means we reached all our goals and met all our funding responsibilities.
Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, my thought was that if we, after it has met all its obligations, okay, that it would be automatically dissolved.
Yeah, it doesn't, the statute doesn't contemplate that. It says when it's been completed, then the governing body, which is us, shall dissolve the DDA. And that's the language that I'm happy to insert at Mr. Mansour's request. It doesn't quite get to where you want to go, but I don't think we have the ability to say that at this point in time.
I'm trying to think of a danger of, you know, the DDA existing. Are there some pitfalls to
Yes.
not having that in there? I'm trying to think.
There's
of
a
an example.
danger, what I see a danger as, at the time the DDA has reached his
Maturity.
maturity, okay, the next board may decide to keep the DDA. Okay? I have a concern about that because I'm not totally for a DDA running the tech village. That's my thought behind it, okay? And someone may wisely think, okay, let's keep the DDA in existence because we let the DDA take over Tech Village.
Okay.
That's a concern that I have. I've seen it in other townships, and I'm not gonna give you an example of one that I definitely could right now, but I'm not gonna say, and it is a mess today.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Massey. Mr. Thomas?
Well, I'd like to see that language put into the DDA, so I would like to give my voice on that. But another thing is, once the DDA is finished with their project and it's dissolved, the board can still come back to the county and start another DDA.
That's true.
So it's not like, you know, but they're gonna start from scratch.
With a different
just
area.
With the different, it can be part of the same area. But that would be, but they're gonna have to start from scratch, correct?
That's correct.
So, I'm sorry,
Mr. Mansor and then Mr. Ruzak.
Yeah, Mr. Laddie, so I'm going back to the purpose here, and it goes through all the kind of great things this can do. But I don't somehow see in this, and maybe I haven't know how to pick this out of it, but I see where it has a purpose to you know, halt property devaluation and then improve things. But I don't see where we say we agree on a plan, and then we work to the plan, and then we finish the DDA. I don't see I don't see that in the definitions, the creation, the termination. None of those things seem to say, we develop a plan, complete the plan, done.
Well, and that's interesting. And that language is taken right out of the statute that has, it's probably, let's see, what do I have there? 10 different examples straight out of the statute of what the DDA can do. The implementation of any plan of development in a district necessary, and this is bullet point number 3, of any plan of the development, and the statute and the ordinance use the term plan as a development plan. And so that would be the implementation of a plan necessary to achieve the goals. The financing element, the TIF element of it, is not spelled out in the powers of the authority in just the sections that I took and put into your ordinance. And what I did was I tried to prioritize them because, again, if you take a look at the statute, it has a really wide-ranging possibility or possible authority for the board. I wanted to take those ones out and highlight them, the ones that we've talked about, and really our motivation for creating the authority. So I agree with you. It doesn't say specifically. It says that they can implement a plan. They have all sorts of, and if you look through the fiscal element of it, they have all sorts of economic powers. They can ask us to create general obligation bonds. They can ask us to create, and we'd have to vouch for them. They can ask us to create revenue bonds. They have all kinds of power. They can even, with your permission, they can even levy a millage. So the term plan and the term TIF plan, they appear in the statute. They are part of the power of the authority, and they're frankly their initiation is at the feet of the board of directors. They're the ones that kick it off. Now, what we're going to do is when we create those board of directors, we want them to be similarly minded. We want them to dive deep into a plan with the anticipation of a TIF plan. They're going to send it to us. We're going to look at it. We're going to tweak it. We'll either approve it, reject it, change it, send it back. So this is I understand the theme of at least some of the questions that I've gotten, and they are, boy, it seems like we've got this really powerful tool, and we're sort of throwing it out
In perpetuity.
for unelected people to operate and to control, and it's got a little fear in it. And Trustee Massey is correct. There are some of these. Not every marriage is made in heaven. Some of these things can be difficult and conflicting, but the overall result is, and I think one of the sources of conflict are that some of the parent municipalities, they don't like the way money's being spent. They think there's too much money being raised, not enough money's coming back. Ann Arbor's having a fight about trying to claw some of their money back from the DDA that they created. So it's got an element of uncertainty to it. But we think, particularly given the position of that land in Tech Village, that this thing could really, if we have problems because it gets too big and too successful and too rich, I'd like to have that problem.
Supervisor
Mr.
Bennett.
Answer.
So let me just,
And then Mr. Guzek.
yeah, let me just go back to that one more time. So, yeah, I'm concerned about creating something in perpetuity that kind of never reaches the goal. So if there's some way, because you know how these things go, they just go on, and then you mentioned like-minded people, but they diverge after a while, which we all know, right? So that way, putting some kind of guidelines on it, is important. I have 3 other questions about this. I don't know if Mr. Guzak
Let's
is
go to
here.
Mr. Guzak, and then we'll come back to you, Mr. Answer. Okay, Mr. Guzak.
I had one question about the income stream, because I know we said that, and I know we haven't got the finals on this yet, because we were deciding whether it was gonna be a dollar amount or a percentage. But there is the length of the time that the other entities gave us, right? I can't remember how many years they're gonna allow this to happen.
No, there's no time.
So there's no times?
They are riding along just like you are.
Oh, okay. I thought there was a time limit on it.
Nope.
Okay,
No.
so the county did give up this increase from, let's say, 2018 to forever.
Correct. And that's a leap of faith, one step removed from you guys.
Right.
But and what you're talking about, and Supervisor Lehman had just reminded me, the plan is really, you're going to see the plan. The plan's going to be developed initially by the directors. You're going to see the plan, you're going to approve the plan, and you can make the plan as big as or as small as you want. If you wanted to just deal with infrastructure, let's just hypothetically say, we just want to run sewer and water in a 4-acre parcel, and when that's done, DDA's done. You theoretically, that wouldn't be wise, but you theoretically could do that. You guys can control the scope of the projects, and you can, by doing that, assuming that the TIF is functioning, you're also controlling the length of time.
Okay, so
Mr. Atkins?
Wanted to add something to this line of conversation. So I agree with Trustee Massey. I think, this current board is putting this together and passing it, and there's a lot of good things this will bring to the community. And I also agree with Trustee Massey, or Mansour, but I think that sometimes these independent boards can start to get pretty powerful over time, and I think if we don't leave an opportunity for a potential new board at some point to exit out of this, then I think it's a disservice to people going forward. I also like the idea, if there was a way to put the language in, I'm not sure if there is, but could this sunset without a vote?
The statute says that once the authority has completed its purpose for which it was organized, it shall be dissolved by ordinance of the governing body. So this governing body, whoever they may be at that time, has a responsibility of dissolving it. Only that body can dissolve it. So it cannot have just we can't put a date in it to where it ends.
But it would have to come for a vote, correct?
To the township board.
Is there a way that it sunsets without that vote?
No.
not in the act.
Mr. Mansour?
Okay, so on section 7, the Board of Directors, there's a mention here of a term. It says, members shall hold office until the member's successor is appointed and qualified. So my question there is, what does qualified mean and who decides that?
It's just the oath of office.
Okay.
To some folks, that's a big deal, but
Okay.
it's just.
Second, the second question is on section 8, powers of authority. So down at the near the very bottom bullet.
I see how you spent your vacation time now, Mr. Mansour.
Yes, well, it's, you can't have fun every minute of every day. Not that this isn't fun. So the second bullet from the bottom, create, operate, and fund marketing initiatives that benefit only retail and general marketing. Is that something inside the act? I mean, why is
Yes.
it limited to those two?
That's verbatim from the act. And what I've done, and that's an interesting, what's interesting, first of all, is it's an interesting concept. The other thing that's interesting to me is that I put it in there, because I am not thinking that way. But I did realize, though, that we are trying to facilitate a multi-use area in our township, and the elements of commercial marketing that might just benefit strictly retail could be something that a DDA might want to consider, a DDA board.
So for instance, I'll just use a hypothetical here. Suppose we had a tech village that we were considering for inside the DDA that had insignificant or inconsequential retail. Then would this still be of benefit to that? I guess it says and general marketing of the district, so I guess you could.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that I want to be able to do. I want us to be able to market tech. We've already been marketing Tech Village, and I want us to be able to have a source of income potentially to market that even further. And also, though, other areas of the district. And it's not just Tech Village. That's the heart of the district in my mind, but there are also other important industrial, residential areas as well.
But the answer was that's language from the act itself. That's
Correct.
The answer to my question. All right, and then the last one here is in section 9. And I think someone started to talk about this, so maybe there was a expanded conversation at the prior meeting. But can you explain how revenue bonds might come about, specifically the authority to put them and the use?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting, I'm glad you asked about that, because, and I said, they threw out the term general obligation bonds and revenue bonds. General obligation bonds would be if we, as a township, pledged our full faith and credit to repay the bonds, and let's say it raised $1 million. And now, what we'd like to do is we'd like the DDA to pay that $1 million back. But if they don't, if they can't, then we're on the hook for that $1 million. I know that gives Earl some cause for concern. The revenue bond side of it would be, with our permission, the DDA could go out and issue revenue bonds. But really, that only works if you have a TIF revenue, a source of TIF revenue that's up and running. You couldn't go out, if we created this board and they created the plan and they created a TIF plan, and the second day they said, well, let's go out and get revenue bonds, no one would loan them money because it's based only on the revenue that's generated through that TIF plan. And it's interesting about those revenue bonds, we have to approve them getting it, but we don't have to pay that money back. So I think you're going to see lenders take a lot different view when you have the full faith and credit of township versus whatever TIF revenue you have. So that's the difference between the two.
So, but it somehow doesn't say, maybe this is so where does it say that we get a vote or we get an influence here on the authorization of the revenue bonds?
It says it in the statute.
Oh, in the statute,
Yep.
okay.
And by the way,
Read the statute.
well, that's a great, and Mr. Lehman just brought up a great point. You guys are also going to have the pleasure of seeing their annual budget, and they have to. By the way, with their own money, they have to provide for the auditing of that. So you're going to be involved. You would be involved in any step, any proposed financing. You'll be involved in any proposed plan. You'll be involved in any proposed TIF plan. You're not initiating those things, but the buck stops with you ultimately. And by the way, I'm happy to provide any statutes that you want regarding financing, the definition of bonds. I had an early conversation, and again, I happened to be talking to Attorney Sweats, who is our bond counsel, and he was talking about some of the experiences that he's had at Dickinson Wright with revenue bonds versus general obligation bonds. He said, don't even think about revenue bonds until you've got a really healthy TIF source of revenue. He's like, it's not even realistic.
Okay, Mr. Thomas?
But Attorney Laddie, when the only control that we're going to have after the DDA is up and rolling, they have their directors, their board members. The only real direction that they get from us is us approving their budget.
And well, after the TIF plan, the development plan and budgets. Yep, and then any funding, well, again, the general revenue bonds, or the general bonds, the revenue bonds, things like that. But yeah, if they wanted to have a millage, they'd have to come and ask you for that. But again, you see these things all initiate from them.
And they have to act within the plan
Correct.
that we approve.
Correct.
So we establish the playing field and many of the rules.
Yeah, you know what's going to be interesting is seeing that first draft of the plan is going to be very interesting. And I can see us having a lot of interesting discussions along this line, because that's going to be the most long-standing document, frankly, other than this ordinance. It's really going to be important to look at that and give that some consideration, because if you're interested in trying to not just see the beginning, but also the middle and the end of what could be developed, we're going to have some foresight that's going to be pretty impressive. So it's going to be an interesting process, and we'll be doing this. But even if we can't even hit the target of the end of the year to get our TIF plan, and I honestly don't really see that happening. You guys are going to get familiar with this maybe more than you want to. But again, I think it's really I think of it as a lever. You're taking a certain amount of tax money and you're putting a 10-foot lever on it, and you're sort of setting it free, and it just economically just be tremendous for it.
Ms. Lane?
Mr. Supervisor, the authority to make the appointments to this board is going to be in your hands. I think with what I'm hearing today, when that point in time comes, and I think it's going to be within the next few months, may I suggest that you have the people that you're going to recommend some sort of resume that you provide to us before it ever goes on the agenda, so that we have, our own thoughts before we come to a meeting and start throwing out names and.
We'll have some type of document prepared, biography or their
Thank you.
background, some sort. I'm not sure it'll be a resume, but we'll make sure everybody's familiar with who they are. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Madam Clerk,
Yes, sir.
what you are suggesting, in my opinion, that's sort of dangerous. That's a dangerous suggestion. Because if you give me information, I'm not going to say what I'm going to say. It's a dangerous suggestion.
Okay.
Because you're going to use it. Let me say this. You're going to use the information for someone else. Okay? I've seen it happen many, many times.
I'll make sure that the board is comfortable with the individuals when you have to approve that slate. And they're going to be individuals that own property in that area. I've already been in contact with a number of individual property and business owners in that area. They have some great ideas already, and their sole purpose in wanting to serve, or me encouraging them to, is to see that Blanc Township grows, and that if we can do it on county dollars instead of our township financing it, all the better. And so I think you'll be happy with the people that I bring forward. Mr. Atkins?
Just one procedural question on the revenue bonds or any of the bonds. Is the procedure then would it be determined by this full board?
Well, it's interesting, because probably what would happen is the DDA would go out and they would meet with bond counsel, they would meet with potentially a bond counselor or a bond accountant, and they would be doing all the legwork for what the bonds could look like, how much they would cost. We can get involved, we can get information at any point in time, but they can't pull a trigger. If it's a general revenue bond, they can't pull the trigger without us pledging our full faith and credit. They can't do a revenue bond without us agreeing to it. But I would suggest to you that, and by the way, they can hire their own accountants, they can hire their own attorneys. I would put the bonus on them, or the onus on them, for doing all the research, presenting a plan, making sure that it's a plan that not only looks at their health, but if it's an obligation bond, that it looks at our health, because we're going to do that too. And so procedurally, that's how I envision it. I envision that they would do essentially present a package to you that would have all of the estimates and all the costs and all the advantages and disadvantages, and you would, again, have veto power at that point in time.
So,
Mr. Mansour?
for convenience, could someone provide, maybe post or something, this statute or act or whatever
sure.
that applies to that, just so I could, that'd be very helpful, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. It's interesting because well, and not to make things worse, but there are, on January 1st, there are sweeping changes to all of the TIF mechanisms. And so in addition to the treat of reading through what is already sort of a slog through the statutory provisions, there are a whole new round of them. The good news is they don't really, they have more to do with reporting, really, because one of the things that Trustee Massey brought up was sometimes there is a bad feeling that these DDAs and these other taxing entities, they're not transparent enough, and they don't have oversight other than township boards or city councils. So the Treasury is going to get more involved in them, make sure that they're more transparent, and obligations that go back and forth, like I talked about seed money, those obligations have to be real. They can't be forgiven. There can't be ways to just avoid taxing. So I'm happy to arrange for the posting of those statutes, and maybe technology-wise, if with the assistance of the township, maybe we can put them on our website.
Perfect. One more thing?
Mr. Mansour?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion to accept the first reading of the ordinance for the DDA.
Support.
Okay, would we like to have a roll call vote?
We
Mr.
would,
Brady?
yeah. And by the way, this ordinance, once if you adopt it tonight, it's gonna be published in full before our next meeting. If you adopt the second reading, it's gonna go off to the Secretary of State. So it's a little more formal than we usually do, but.
Okay, Ms. Lane, would you call?
Yes.
Roll?
Mr. Massey?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mr. Mansour?
Yes.
Mr. Atkins?
Yes.
Mr. Guzak?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Mr. Supervisor?
Yes. Okay. I would like to ask our board to take a 5-minute break at this time. I apologize to our audience. We've been trying to get a board picture for the past 3 months, and we have not been able to do that. We want to take 5 minutes, get a board picture, and then we will be back here. So I apologize. So at this time, we're going to adjourn for 5 minutes. And board members, we want to meet immediately in the lobby by the Blanc Township sign, and we'll be right back at it.
Oh, yeah.
Just remember.
All right, welcome back to our Blanc Township Board meeting after a brief recess. And at this point, I would like to make a slight change in our agenda, if it's acceptable to our board, to move up item F, which is the board consideration to grant approval of NCG Trillium Theater request for a liquor license.
Do we need a motion for that, Attorney Laddie, or can we just do it?
You just go ahead and do it. How's that? Technically, you should have a motion, but.
I'll make the motion, then we move the agenda item.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so at this time, we want to consider a motion to grant approval of NCG Trillium Theater request for a liquor license. We have 5 of these licenses at this time. Mr. Limata or Mr. Laddie, would you like to explain?
Sure. The licenses are given to a municipality based upon population. We currently have 5. This request from NCG is that they get one of those licenses so that they can use it at the theater or the cinema here in Blanc Township. I think for the board's consideration, probably the question that you need to ask yourselves is, you have 5 and typically they're used, and Clerk Lane had mentioned on Tuesday that the board had kind of set a policy that's brought to attract new businesses into the area, was the former board's policy. But you have 5, there will be a new census in 2020 that may increase population and make us more eligible for additional liquor licenses. And if you think about where the likelihood is that you would use these 5 licenses, like I'm thinking, don't hang on to it if you don't need to. You're probably looking at Tech Village potentially, maybe something in the outlots at Genesis. The other area for development really was in that area by the NCG theaters. When that was first kicked off, that was really designed to be a retail and a restaurant establishment, so kind of a place for the township to gather. I think that's what's before you. We did have it thoroughly investigated by the Grand Blanc Township Police Department to make sure that everything was in order in their application. We got a recommendation back from Grand Blanc Police Department that sees no reason why they wouldn't move this forward.
Ms. Lane, you did a little bit of research in terms of how many licenses were currently being held in escrow in Genesee County?
Yes, and I provided it to the board, Mr. Supervisor. There are 31.
Okay. Mr. Atkins?
2 questions. How long have we been in possession of the 5 that we have?
We received the 5 after we had the 2010 census. It's every census unless you ask for a special census, and it's based on having 1,500 people per, and we have 37,508, which is where the 25 came from. Prior to 2010, we had only 29,000 people, so we were very, very tight up until getting these more recent ones.
Also, we do have an individual here representing NCG Theaters. If we would like to invite him to the podium, we could have him.
My second question. So we received 5 in 2010. So in 8 years we have not.
I think we got 4 because of the difference. We were holding on to the last one that we had for something special. Because once we gave our free one away, and at that time they were a lot tighter about not allowing people to bring in Class C licenses from other counties or other areas.
Because on Tuesday, as I mentioned, and Mr. Mansur wasn't here for this discussion, but in the past, the liquor laws, license laws, only allowed for licenses within your community to stay within your community. The laws have changed now to allow you to transfer a license anywhere within the county. So it's much easier to find, for example, a license, let's say, that was put into escrow by a closed business in some other part of our county. A business can purchase that and bring it here. So that's something that's changed since the last census, and we were awarded those licenses.
This was the information I provided.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Chair.
Would we like to have a gentleman from NCG address the group? I think he.
Yes, I have a question for you,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Would you like him to present and then ask Mr. Massey, or?
Well, however he chooses to do it. It's okay with me.
Sure.
My name is Mark Henning, and I'm with the Neighborhood Cinema Group. My address is 1410 Jackson Drive, Owasso, Michigan. So I'm here to answer any questions, give a little bit of our future plans with NCG, and I can answer your question if you'd like first.
Okay.
Could you move your microphone up just a little bit so
How's that better?
that way it records a little bit better for us?
Okay.
Thank you.
My question, why do you want the liquor license? Will it enhance your business?
Absolutely. I mean, and this was kind of part of my spiel that I was going to give you guys, but 12 years ago when we opened Trillium, it was a state-of-the-art movie theater. Looking at it right now to our standards, it is not. And this is a family-owned business. It's not a corporation. And our plan moving forward is to upgrade all the seating to luxury seating, the bar, concession stand, all that. And obviously you need to increase revenue when you do that. So the bar and the beer and the wine is a big reason for us to look for this.
Go ahead, and if you have any other information you want to present.
But no, just, Grand Blanc's been a great location for us. When we opened that, I think it was 12 years ago, it really helped NCG as a whole move forward. Because now we have 23 locations in 9 different states all the way down to Florida. And the Geigers are very good about putting money back into the theater. After we built it, then we added the IMAX, which was a huge investment we made. And now we're kind of circling back around. I have 3 seat projects we're doing out of state right now, but in the next 2.5 years, we plan on modifying all the risers in all the theaters to where we can put the luxury seating in, the full recliners. So, and then do some touch up on the outside and the inside. So we've done little things like painting and carpet in the inside, but our big goal over the next 2.5 years are seats, and you know, you're probably looking at probably close to a $1.5 million increase, or budget for us for that.
Mr. Henning, do you find that the people that are utilizing the alcohol or serving of alcohol, are they movie patrons, or do you attract a crowd just for the lounge?
We feel it's going to be just movie patrons, people that want to have a beer before or after the movie.
Right.
So
that's what I've found. But.
Yeah, talking to other operators, MGR, Imagine, Celebrations, you know, it's made a significant increase to their profits. So, and we've really pushed it off quite a while. I mean, we're one of the last change in Michigan to do it.
Right. Mr. Mansour?
Mr. Henning, thanks for coming. So a couple questions. How many of the, I think you said you have 23 theaters.
Correct.
How many of those have liquor in them?
This is going to be our first one. We've applied for 3.
And when it says liquor license here, I heard you talk about beer and wine. Are you hard spirits too, or no?
The license is Class C, which is liquor, but I don't know if you're familiar with the theater. We have the small concession stand on the back side of Holly Road. That is where we're going to remodel and put beer and wine starting out. You won't be able to buy it up front where you buy your pop and popcorn at. So yes, we are only starting out with beer and wine. At this point in Blanc and Midland, we don't have any interest in going into hard liquor.
So you get control of the sale of that like any other bar would, show your ID, etc.?
Yes, we're looking in. There's a program we're putting our management through called TIPS. And then there's also hardware and software. We're looking into getting the hardware where you have to scan the driver's license. I know not a lot of people like that, but it does keep it very safe and simple. Instead of just a visual, you actually have to scan it.
Are you concerned that, well, okay, thank you. Okay.
I'll admit I'm actually a certified TIPS instructor as well as sold those devices in the past.
Are there a certain amount of, like, can I come up and order 6 drinks and?
No.
Okay.
They do have, and we don't have all our policies in place yet, but there will be, you can do it a number of ways, limit the number of drinks with wristbands. Obviously the price will police some of it, kind of like at a ball game, but yeah, we're looking into, obviously, you know, our insurance company is really cracking down on us, making sure we got all our.
I'm just interested in getting out to minors. I'm not really concerned about the rest of it.
It's a concern, but that's what we're looking at all our policies.
Will they consume the alcohol in that area, or?
No, they'll be able to take it into the theater.
Okay. Ms. Lane?
I know that you're talking right now about having just beer and wine. This particular license is going to allow you to serve hard liquor as well as doing Sunday sales. So when you decide to do that, would you be coming back to our board to say, I want to start doing this? I don't think the law would require you to, but
No.
I want the board to know that.
They're not required to. You get the license, you get to use it.
So it's
one of the misnomers with alcohol too, and I don't want to turn this into a class for alcohol, but if you take 1 ounce of 100 proof spirits, 5 ounces of wine, 12 ounces of beer, which is a standard beer bottle, standard wine glass, and 1 shot of 100 proof liquor, which of those do you think has the most alcohol in it?
I'm gonna guess they're all the same.
You would be guessing correctly. So the misconception is that by serving hard liquor, you're somehow serving the really hard stuff. Well, let me tell you, a glass of wine has the same amount of alcohol as a beer, as well as a shot of liquor. So, Mr. Atkins?
You know, we have a large school district here, the high school, a lot of kids, and a lot of kids go and see movies. And if the alcohol is able to be transported into a dark theater, do you have any ideas on how that, any ideas how to not get that handed off, or?
That's part of our process we're going through right now with the tips and the different training on how to police that. So I don't have all the answers on that. Our concession director, Carol Douglas, was on vacation. She's kind of spearheading the whole tips training, but it's obviously something we're going to have to do with wristbands like they do at a lot of concerts halls. When you go into, they have different colors that show minors, but you know, you would assume that that would indicate that they're 21 and that they could have the drink in their hand. So,
Mr. Thomas?
I just have a couple of questions real quick. You said that you're asking this from 3 other different locations.
yeah, we kind of started the process here in Grand Blanc, Lansing, and Midland.
Are you doing it all at the same time?
Yes, we're going through the same
Are you
process.
asking Midland and
Lansing.
Lansing? Are you asking their boards to give you a free liquor license?
They don't have any in those 2
They
locations.
have 0.
They have 0.
Now, so then you're gonna go out to the state of Michigan and try to purchase one?
Correct.
Have you decided, so no one, so if we don't give you one of our free ones, you're going to purchase one from somebody else, correct?
Correct. I mean,
Okay.
you know, I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that, you know, we've made, you know, I think we're a great part of this community. You know, we've spent a lot of money and we plan on to continue to, you know, make improvements. So I guess I'm just asking.
Yep, I got you.
Mr. Atkins, you had a follow-up question? Mr. Mansur.
I just, you know, it just comes to my mind, you mentioned Imagine and Celebration. I've been to both theaters, and I think Imagine, you know, they have that service, they have the upgraded seating you're talking about. But I do know that Celebrations, I believe earlier this year or last year, you probably know, the one in Southfield, they decided to stop serving alcohol because it led to a shooting and an uptick of violence in the theater.
Yeah.
You're not too worried about that, or?
I'm not familiar with that. I mean, I know, I remember reading the story. I don't know a lot about the neighborhood. I would hope, you know, we feel very confident that Grand Blanc, hopefully it won't, you know, spur that on. So we really don't, we do have security there, just really more for peace of mind. We've had very few problems there with teenagers or adults, so.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mansur?
Yeah, so I was just, and maybe this is kind of toward Mr. Limita as well, from the police standpoint. So, I mean, we would have the ability to spot check, I would guess. There's compliance with the under 21
This will be,
on a occasion,
this will
right?
be
To just
exactly like any
ensure-
other retail establishment will be open for those liquor license checks or the, you know, underage checks.
Yeah, typically, my familiarity with this, since I work in a little bit of this, is that the police could go in, let's say that there's a report of minors drinking. The police could go in undercover, they could go in with a badge and ask for IDs.
Okay.
Right in the theater if they chose to.
That's fine.
And if an adult is sharing their drink with a minor, they can be in plenty of hot water as well for contributing to a minor. So, and I doubt that they'll allow multiple drinks to be sold without seeing multiple IDs. And also, from my familiarity with other theaters, is that the drink prices are not the same as what you would buy at your local convenience store.
Oh, there's an upcharge?
I-
They're doing this for profit?
You know, I would like, I mean, I'd like to see us continue to support. This is a great theater, and it's a nice amenity for us to have in the community, and so, you know, I'm supportive of that, just to make sure, though, that we have control of the alcohol, especially the minors.
Very good point. You know, we look around the county, and there are a few theaters that have shut down over the years. There's one just off I-69, I think it was the Showcase East Theater.
It's gone. They tore it down.
And, the building's gone now.
Oh, yeah.
But it has sat vacant for
Years.
probably 10
Decades.
years.
Yeah.
We've seen some others that have been shut down, and it isn't, We want them to
Good
be able to-
operation here, good operation here.
Yeah. It isn't going to benefit them to have an operation that isn't run well either, so. Everything I've seen to date is a well-run theater. They were somebody that believed in our township 15 years ago when they built the facility, and I see them continuing to maintain it. And again, like you said, Mr. Mansour, if we have some enforcement action that we can provide if we feel as though they need some help. Mr. Thomas?
Quick question, Supervisor. If they weren't coming to us to ask for it at no charge, would they just go and, how does that work? I mean,
They would have to find somebody that's willing to sell the license.
No, but does this board have the authority to?
No.
No, to say you can't have liquor, you can't,
They can get a liquor license if they purchase it.
and they can sell it?
As long as the Liquor Control Commission approves their license. You know, they have to go through the process, which is
That's what.
an arduous process, but if they qualify,
You
they don't
actually
have to
use a
come before
broker.
this board.
Yeah, it was more of
Yeah.
a self-educational.
Mr. Laddie, I'm sure, is very familiar, because years ago, I imagine we had quite a few of those hearings that came before the board or planning commission for licenses.
We did, and it was, and we had a lot of discussion about what we've always, Grambling's always had this issue. In fact, we talked about it on Tuesday of how do we promote restaurants, restaurants that have liquor service and things that are less associated with maybe a diner. And so we spent, the township in the past spent a lot of time trying to tie a liquor license to that kind of development. And it had, as you can tell, it had sort of mixed results. But, and again, since then, we did get an extra allocation of licenses, and also the downturn slowed the requests.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Henning.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that this board recommend to the Michigan Liquor Control Commission the approval of this license for NCG Incorporated in Trillium Development.
Support.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think it's a roll call.
Is it?
Not according.
Not according to this.
Not according to the form from the LCC.
Oh, just yeas and nays? Okay, perfect.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Any opposed?
No.
I didn't
Okay.
hear anything about giving the
Thank you, Mr.
license
Henning.
for free.
Well, we can't really charge them.
I'm sorry, Mr. Thomas?
Was that motion including us giving them a liquor license?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
We notified the Liquor Control Commission. Well, they still have to go through the process of qualifying for it,
Right.
and that we don't have any.
So I have a question about the balance, the 4 that we have left, maybe we'll get more next time around. Is this something that fits into anything related to the planning commission in terms of
It doesn't go
zone
before the planning
ordinance, or-
commission, it strictly comes here.
But I think what Mr. Mansur is asking, is this a consideration that the
Yeah.
planning commission would
Yeah.
look at how we utilize these in
Yeah,
the future?
exactly right, exactly right.
I think that's a good idea, because, again, that's how we did it in the past. And what we did, though, is we had a policy that, and we still have a policy today, but we had it in the past tending more toward a certain type of development. And it'd be interesting if the planning commission could provide you with some sort of guidelines to put in your ordinance, because it's not gonna be part of the zoning ordinance, so it'll just be recommending something to you.
Could we ask,
There is a-
would we make a motion to that effect
No,
tonight? or
I think you can just have Mr. Mansour
Consensus?
Yeah, I'll take that to
take it to
him.
him.
Take
Okay.
it to him for sure.
There is a policy that we have at the township, I found an old one, as far as a policy that the township board had, as far as liquor licenses that I can provide to.
If
Gentlemen.
you could please email that to me and to Chairman Gellings of the Planning Commission, that'd be very helpful. Thank
Okay.
you.
Is that an operational issue?
All right. No, it's a board issue. Okay. The next item on the agenda will be item E. The board will consider a resolution to create a township revolving fund of $500,000 to be used for the purpose of financing the cost of certain special assessment projects. Mr. Limita?
Sure. Thank you, Supervisor Bennett. We had quite a bit of discussion on Tuesday in regards to this, and for Trustee Mansour's benefit, This was just presented and primarily had to do with the Concord Green project that we did last year on the helping the residents over there with the repaving project. It came in at about $470,000. We had not bonded that project yet. Treasurer Guzak was waiting for the final invoice to come through, the final, so that we knew that it was the final, that there was no other surprises. They have absolutely completed all their punch list items, and so we started the conversation about do we want to just bond this project, or do you want to have the ability as a township board to have an alternative for things like this? One of the things that you can do is create a township improvement revolving fund. We suggested at $500,000, and you would be able to do these types of projects quicker without going through bonding. It will save you the bond cost, typically on a project like this, $7,000 in a ballpark, and then you would have the ability to collect interest. Currently what we would do is we would bond it, say we bonded it at 3%, and then we would be able to put 1% administrative fee on there to handle the administrative things of the putting it on the tax roll, collecting it, that kind of thing. You would be able to charge up to 5% interest on this, so that the township would put it in there rather than just send the money back to the bond, pay the bond principal and interest. You would collect the up to 5% interest for yourself. In this particular one, we're saying where the bond market is right now, it would probably make sense to charge 4% interest on this project. We know it's $470,000. One of the reasons we talked about is that we've really already made some payments on this. It started the project last year. As the bills came due, we had to pay. So we're using township funds to pay until at which time we issue the bond. Nothing prevents us from issuing the bond at the beginning of the project. We often do that on the bigger projects, obviously, like build a police building for $10 million. You issue $10 million worth of bonds, and you start moving forward. This is, we typically on these smaller projects, we would just wait till it was completely completed, and then we'd know the exact amount of the bond and move forward. But this just gives the board's consideration to give you an alternative to bonding all these smaller projects. On the downside, the money's tied up for 10 years, typically what we do on a road project. You're going to earn 4% for 10 years. But if you compare that to what we're earning on just the general fund balance investments right now, that does compare favorably.
Mr. Lehman, our fund balance, the percentage that we try to stay within is 12 to 15%?
Correct.
Which would amount to what dollar amount, just for the public?
$2 million, slightly over $2 million. So if you think about where we were at the end of December 31st, 2017, we were at about 21% of it's 12 to 15% board mandated of the general fund expenses that we try to keep our reserve balance at. So we were at 21% at the end of last year. So that gave us the ability to take down and bring it back down into that 15% range. So usually that happens, and it's because we came in under budget, and so that money then gets used as what the board has been allocating to OPEB or the defined benefit police pension plan, the excess fund balance, and that's been our directive since I got here from the board, is that we use those. And so really you're still keeping that fund balance, so you're keeping over $2 million in fund balance for the general fund, and Treasurer Guzak is investing that for the township board. So we're always going to keep that balance. I mean, it's basically our working capital. It's our money that we know that we always have that 15% in reserve in case we were slow in getting, our revenue stream, or there was some issue with our revenue stream. That's why the board mandated the 15% reserve.
At any given time, probably for Mr. Guzak or you, Mr. Lehman, at any given time, how much do we have liquid that we could invest or tie up? I mean, we wouldn't want to tie all of it up. I mean, obviously this would be for 10 years, but.
Right, that's why, when you're establishing this, I think I told you earlier that Meridian Township, for example, has like $1.1 million in their revolving fund. It depends on what the board's, if your tolerance for it is, where you want to be. I mean, we picked $500,000 just because it's a good number for those smaller projects. We've seen a lot of these smaller subdivision projects come in at the $500,000 or less mark, and like I said, it gives you an alternative. It saves residents money, and we earn the interest rather than give it away. But again, our money, we typically aren't locking our money down for 10 years in an investment either. I mean, we're locking it down for less than a year for most parts, it's liquid cash. This isn't our long-term investment. This is not our OPEB, investment dollars where we're long-term investment. This is really just our working capital that we're using from the general fund.
Okay. Ms. Lane and then Mr. Massey.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. As of today, we have another small project that I thought the board should know about, and that is Green Valley chose to do a 5-year maintenance program on their particular streets. I was called by the person in charge over in that subdivision who informed me that Mr. Hill called her and told her they're going out for bids. It's late for us, but it's September 17th for bids and doing the 3-inch overlay of asphalt in October into mid-November. And that one is only $380,000, and although this particular one is that we were discussing was Concord Green, I wanted the board to know that right away, this one is going to be coming up less than that. And I don't see where, if we're going to keep a $500,000 limit on it, and we have one right away that's another $380,000, at least that's the estimate I gave them during information. It's like we're giving to one, and it happens to be my subdivision, not giving it to another, which is a 10-year. I'm not totally, since these things are all happening now, I'm not totally comfortable with, I think we should just keep the same bonding procedure that we have used so that we're not perceived to be picking favorites.
Mr. Thomas?
We need to procedurally, can you ask if there's a motion? Has any board member made a motion or a second?
We can discuss it even without the motion at this point. We don't have to have a motion to discuss it. But Mr. Limita, in terms of, or Mr. Laddie, in terms of showing favoritism to, or the perception of showing favoritism, is there any? I mean,
No, there's no benefit. The residents won't feel it one way or the other, frankly. I mean, they're going to pay because we'll be applying a competitive interest rate, which they would pay if we got a loan from a bank or if we finance it ourselves. They don't feel any difference.
Don't they have to pay for the bonds?
They have to pay for the cost of the bond counsel, but.
There's what, 7,000 to 12,000?
No,
Well, it depends on the size of the project.
Concord Green is right now is around 7,000.
So they could, potentially they could save that amount of money, but you could also look, you could also look at the 1% administrative charge. You could look at the difference between maybe 3.5% financing and 4% plus an administrative charge. Maybe the project could save $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 if it was handled in-house rather than out, but that's a small difference on a $500,000 project. But it is, it's there. Your point is correct.
so we would earn, the benefit to it would be that we would earn the, 4.5% roughly.
Correct.
Versus.
Rather than being paid to a bank, we do.
Versus them paying it to a bank or
Exactly.
bonding. The negative would be that we're tying up capital for 10 years, but we have that as working capital. It isn't liquid at that point, and we found out on Tuesday that we can't go out for a bond after 18 months after doing the project. So if we decide to do it ourselves, we're going to be staying with that for the life of this loan, which would be 10 years. Mr. Massey?
Mr. Chair, I do have a concern, and I'm glad Madam Clerk raised my concern, is that this board never, in my opinion, wants to show that there may be some favoritism going on. Because when someone hears about this, they're gonna assume that, they're gonna make the assumption there's more involved in this than just what we have learned here through discussing this, okay? So I'm not comfortable with this.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts? No motion on the floor for it at this point, right?
Correct.
So, do we want to pass? It looks like maybe we do, since I don't hear any motion for that.
I don't intend to make a motion on this.
All right, well, if there is no motion, then it will die due to lack of support. And we'll move on to the next agenda item. I appreciate, though, the fact that Mr. Limita has brought this to us. I want to make sure that we are turning over every rock to look at any revenue that we can earn. And I appreciate you bringing this option to us, Mr. Limita.
Thank you. And, you know, a lot of communities use revolving funds. We sat here and talked earlier about the DDA. Sometimes you'll see like a DDA will create a smaller revolving fund for the community, and then whatever's in there is available till it gets paid back. They typically do like 2-year loans to maybe update the facade of a downtown district or whatever. And there's other opportunities for the revolving fund. It's just an option that you know is available, and if it ever looks like it fits ours, just let me know and we'll bring it back to the board.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, next item I think is item G. And the board will consider the performance evaluation of the superintendent for the period of September 2017 through August 2018. Mr. Laddie?
Mr. Chairman, we're going to discuss the supervisor's performance, and he has the option of having that done in an open or closed session.
You mean superintendent?
Oh, superintendent. Yes.
Unless you want to discuss mine.
We discuss yours all the time, you know.
Yeah.
I will have it in open session like I normally do.
Okay, very good. How would you like to proceed, Mr. Laddie?
Well, I'll introduce the topic. Also, a bit of the process. Each year, all of our department heads, I think, go through a very similar process with Superintendent Limita, where they are asked to fill out a uniform performance evaluation themselves, and then I think turn it into Mr. Limita, and he will go through and meet with them and talk. And he'll provide his responses, and then they'll meet and talk about the results. Same is true with Superintendent Limita. When he came to us 3 years ago. He implemented the process for the department heads and also included himself in that process, but his reviewers are you guys. And so here we are again. We do this each fall. Mr. Limita kicked off the process by filling out his own performance evaluation. That was submitted to you all for your review, and then also we ask you for as an individual basis to fill out his performance evaluation. And our office took those responses and consolidated them into a sort of a master result list. And you have a copy of the master result list, as does Superintendent Limita. And I will let you get on with your the board deliberation regarding the performance, but I just want to point out a couple of points to the audience as well. There are 13 different categories of performance in the evaluation, and there are 5 different grades. Well, 4 really. There's one option of not applicable, or the person filling out the form doesn't feel that they have enough contact or knowledge to make a grade on that category of performance. The other choices are an unacceptable, needs improvement, a good, or consistently performs above requirements. And Mr. Limita, as you can see in your compiled statistic, consistently performs above requirements. In the 13 categories, he scored that, the highest score 68 times. He scored good in the 13 categories 17 times. He scored 0 needs improvement and 0 unacceptables, and 7 not applicables, meaning that again, the author didn't feel that they had enough information to base a grade on. And so with that overview, I'll turn it over to you for discussion.
So how would we like to proceed? Do we want to go through these comments and read them? Is that what we do? Or?
I don't know if you need to go through it verbatim if you want. I think it would seem to me in the past we've done it where board members who felt that you wanted to make a comment,
okay,
whatever that may be on a category, would do that. We didn't necessarily go through verbatim.
Good. All right, very good. Mr. Thomas, what was your comment? I'm sorry.
No, I was agreeing with Attorney Laddie.
so
Okay.
we don't really need.
All right, good. I couldn't remember how we handled this in the past. We went through it, but we would be here for a while if we went through and read every single comment. So I guess we'll open it up to the board to bring up any comments that they would like to make with regard to the evaluation and the quality of work. What have you. I'll kick it off then. Is that when we hired Mr. Limita 4 years ago, this is our third year? 3 years
on
ago.
August 24th.
Okay, August 24th. You know, one of the things, Blanc Township has proud tradition of being a quality community, and we wanted to make sure that we continue to provide quality government services. I think one of the things that I've seen, Mr. Limita, I know I've seen this, is that the level of professionalism of our township has benefited. Not that we didn't have professionals here, but the way that we operate, the way that personnel issues are handled, the way that union contracts are negotiated, even the physical appearance of our office, I think, is critical to individuals coming in and visiting or residents that live here. But I have seen a number of improvements in that area, drastic. I think, you know, some of the things that Mr. Limita has brought was that a focus on maybe some of the things that aren't visible but are critical to our township, like the unfunded liabilities and OPEB. Those things that now the rest of the state, at least state government, are requiring local governments to focus on. And we've started that process when we hired Mr. Limita of looking at, taking a close examination even before we were forced to by the state, and looking at how we can tackle those unfunded liabilities and devoting our resources to paying those down. And I think one of the things that Mr. Limita brings to the table is a continual effort to look at ways to raise revenue in terms of saving money on things. If there's, you know, more interest to be earned on a particular way of investing, and Mr. Guzak and Mr. Limita have worked on that, and we've seen substantial strides in the last several years in that regard. It might be as simple as you know, going to direct deposit for paying employees and what have you, so that we aren't spending all of our time cutting checks. It might be the software that we've implemented for payroll. Could be implementing our software BSNA that helps us run the township, and utilizing that to its fullest extent. So we're taking advantage of technology. But I see Mr. Limita as running our township as a business, but yet we have expenses, obviously, that don't work like a business. There's things that we have to cover that we don't get paid for. But I do see us running a much tighter ship, and I see residents getting service. I think one of the things that doesn't happen consistently is getting, you know, praise for doing a great job, but we certainly hear it when things, you know, fall off the track. And one of the things that I think definitely we can see is that, you know, when we meet as a board, we're meeting over issues to move forward. We're not putting out fires. We're not resolving labor disputes. We're not having, I know in the past we spent quite a bit of money on what do you call it, when the union grievances. I don't think this board's had, I know we haven't had one grievance with this board, and I don't believe after we hired Mr. Limita we've had.
And negotiations also. We
Right.
spent a lot of money on negotiations that we haven't
Yeah.
spent with.
So I think, you know, the level of professionalism, the amount of attorney bills that we've actually saved on by Mr. Limita doing a lot of that labor negotiation herself, and the lack of grievances by employees has saved us a fortune. But again, I don't hear, I think one of the things that early on when this board, even one of our subcommittees met to talk about becoming more friendly towards development, I haven't heard one complaint of that we are getting in the way of development. In fact, one example is an individual that called me to complain, and he called me back immediately to apologize because he had not been well informed, but that we had gone overboard to make sure that we satisfied and helped speed up the process for his development. So I'm very pleased with the work that we've been able to accomplish with Mr. Lima's leadership. Yes, Mr. Massey?
I have a basic question, and I don't think we have ever discussed this question before. I don't know whether there's a process, a procedure, or policy for this question or not. If so, please enlighten me. What do we have in place for dissatisfied employees?
Well, for example, Mr. Lima goes through a review process with our department heads, with employees. They do a similar evaluation of themselves. He gets a copy of that, and then he goes through it, and he makes note of what his judgment is of their performance. And then if he meets with them, goes through it, and Mr. Lehman, I'll let you explain how that works with the employees. So.
And if you're referring to from a performance evaluation standpoint, so if somebody was dissatisfied with the performance evaluation after going with me, what we do for our process is then they have the opportunity to come to the board because we want something that's a fail-safe in case I'm treating somebody unfairly because of an internal bias or whatever, that if they felt that they were being treated unfairly, then we give them the option to bring it to the board, and again, you'd be asked if they want it in open or closed session, and we had this actually happen a couple years ago with an employee who was eventually terminated, but I think it just gives that fail-safe where you don't want it just, as your personnel director, you guys don't need to be involved in this stuff on a day-to-day basis, and we don't ever want to politicize that performance evaluation or human resources function, but at the same time, it's critical that that employees know that they do have a board that they can go to that will override me if there is some bias or there's some unfairness in the process.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
My question to you, you said a couple of years ago, this board came in existing almost 2 years ago, not quite. That was prior to this board, right?
It would have been probably the June
2015.
June of 2016.
I was part of that process.
I just wanted to make sure that, because I haven't heard anything, I wanted to clear that up.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yeah.
A couple of things that I just want to bring up that were included in the review that I'm not sure that they should be part of the review. And I guess I should have asked Mr. Laddie prior to the board meeting about the possibility of removing a few things, but there's a few things in the review that I don't feel are part of Mr. Lima's responsibilities that were added. As far as one of the comments was superintendent has been well spoken at the Grand Blanc Chamber, however he's not a regular attendee and no knowledge of other speaking engagements. To my knowledge, we don't ask for what speaking engagements you attend or if your performance should be based on whether or not you attend the chamber meetings. As far as pending board matters, discussion on installing water lines when subdivision roads are totally redone, suggested 2017 during discussion of village green roads. Number 2, subcommittees have not been functional, and 3, no knowledge of responses to residents or developers' requests. The subcommittees actually are a board function, so Mr. Lima doesn't have input other than to encourage us to meet, which he has done, and I think we've been doing that, but we've been, I think, pretty focused on the fire. The other issue in terms of installing water lines when subdivision roads are totally redone, that's also going to be a board-driven activity. If we choose to move in that direction, that's going to be the board's decision. And as far as no knowledge of responses to residents or developers' requests, that's not something that's regularly divulged to this board. I think the Planning Commission and Building Department would deal with that. And one final is that the clerk and treasurer staffs are frontline and have always been exceptional examples of customer service, have no experience with development-ready community. Since my return in 2016, department heads always work together. I thought there was something in there about the frontline office but those employees are Dennis's employees, actually. And as far as suggesting a written monthly report, I'm fine with Mr. Limita's giving a report at their board meeting. I really don't need to have monthly list of the meetings he's attended. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I don't believe those are part of what I review.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yes.
just add a comment? When I look at this, I look at the responsibility to make a decision in the category of either unacceptable, needs improvement, good, or consistently performs above. And as I mentioned before, Mr. Limita got 68 performs above, 17 goods, no needs improvement, no unacceptable, and only 7 NAs. I think if I had a criticism or a point to make about this setup on these performance evaluations, in my mind, the weight falls on those decisions of good performance, performs above. It's more reflective of the body of work over the course of a year, rather than what happens to be on somebody's mind. To give an example, and maybe people take it in a different way. Maybe it means something different to other people. I wouldn't necessarily see that in the face of this performance review and in the scores that he got. I'm not necessarily sure I'd concern myself with individual examples.
Okay. Mr. Guzak?
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I think, like you stated, he's exceeded in a lot of these categories, and we all know what. I think we should just go in and decide how much we're going to give him, because he's doing a great job. So I don't see a problem with any of it.
I don't see a problem.
Just decide what we should, what the increase should be.
I think it's a hell of an evaluation. I appreciate the hard work.
Right.
Mr. Massey?
I do have one question. You raised a concern. What do you mean by frontline employees?
I think what was meant was the office and up front.
First people you see when you walk in the door.
Yeah, the first people you see when you walk in the door. I just wanted to clarify that those are actually Mr. Limita. And I agree with Mr. Laddie that we need to look at the entire body of work, and I just noticed those, they stick out to me.
Yeah, I'm not really happy right now, but I still think he's a hell of a supervisor, or superintendent.
You've got to help me.
I gotta help both.
Mr. Chair.
But don't like him right now, I still love him.
Along that line, I have a question. What bodies in this building and other buildings that the superintendent is not the leader of?
So what is Mr. Limita as superintendent? So the superintendent position, what departments or what organizations does he not have direct supervision over?
No, I said, what bodies you can use it?
Okay, what bodies?
Yeah, in other words, what bodies, live bodies in this building or other buildings that are associated with the township that you are not the leader of?
That's a pretty easy question to answer. We have elected department heads and the treasurer and clerk. Obviously, I'm not the supervisor of, and their deputies also report directly and serve at their will, so I don't have any supervision over them. The election workers are strictly report to the clerk. I don't have any supervision over that. Everybody else, I do.
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec is really, they are employees of the
Commission.
Parks and Rec Commission, not the township.
So you wouldn't have
the fire
supervision.
are employees of the township, so the fire department reports to me.
Okay. So nobody in this building except the deputy clerk and the deputy treasurer that you have no supervision on?
Correct.
Okay. I never heard it explained before.
Sure.
Yes, thank you.
Supervisor Bennett?
Yes.
I just want to say, you guys, going through these things, I know it's kind of a pain, and I appreciate you all taking the time to go through, because it's one of those things where you have to carve out time, sit down, think about my performance on the individual metrics, and I thank you guys for seriously taking the time, because it doesn't always occur, and this doesn't have to be a one-time thing. I mean, if you think of something else that we need to talk about, just call me and let's talk about it, or there's something I'm doing that you guys something I'm not doing that you'd like me to do, just let me know. I mean, I really do appreciate the confidence that you placed in me. I truly think I have the greatest job in the world. I mean, I seriously love it here, but I don't get this stuff done if I don't have my staff. We have a phenomenal staff here. Our department heads are just incredible. They're true professionals. The rest of the staff is just absolutely fantastic. For me, it's such an incredible opportunity. And the nice thing about annually going back and going through your performance evaluation is you get to reflect back. I've been here for 3 years now, which number one, it surprised me I've been here for 3 years now. Time flies, but it's looking at where we were and where we've been, and the challenge for me is to make sure I don't take my foot off the gas. I have to keep reinventing it and reimagining it and making sure that we're moving forward, that we're not just resting on our laurels, that we're doing something different. And if you ever catch me doing that, I need a wake-up call, because that's what you hired me for, is to keep looking out. What can we do differently? What can we do better? What can we do next that makes the whole township better? And again, I really appreciate the comments. And again, it doesn't have to be a one-time thing. Any follow-up, send me an email, give me a call, come in the office. That'd be fantastic. But thanks again.
Any other comments? Again, I think it speaks for itself, and that very favorable review again, and we appreciate your service, Mr. Lemina.
Thank
Or
you.
Mr. Laddie.
What happens at the director level is there is then discussion based in large part on the performance reviews as to whether or not an increase in compensation is warranted. And so if you'd like to engage in that discussion tonight, we've reserved an executive session for you. I know you have a few other items on your agenda to get through, but let's consider a closed session to talk about what compensation you might want to consider.
I'd make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion?
Mr. Guzak?
So,
Yes.
excuse me, what motion are we planning to go to executive session now, or at the point in the agenda?
I'll clarify my motion to go into executive session now to discuss Mr. Lima's compensation.
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay, there's been a motion, it's been seconded.
Roll
All's in-
call.
Okay.
Discussion.
Any discussion?
Let's take a 5-minute break and then go into executive, closed door session.
Is that acceptable to everyone to take a,
So we're gonna, first of all, if we go into executive session, we're suspending the regular agenda for
Right.
that purpose, and then you want a 5-minute break included in
All
it.
we have left is future position.
okay, so is everybody okay with a 5-minute break? Okay,
I'll amend my motion to add a 5-minute break.
okay.
We do that with the rest of.
Mr. Mansour,
And I'll second it.
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Adkins,
Yes.
Mr. Guzak,
Yes.
Mr. Massey,
Yes.
myself, yes, Mr. Bennett.
Yes.